Hello, and welcome to this online presentation of the PEN Ackerley Prize for 2020. The prize is for literary autobiography and memoir and was founded in memory of the writer and editor J R Ackerley, whose own My Father and Myself is a classic example of the memoir form. The judges for the prize are all themselves writers, and they are the writer and artist Colin Spencer, the short story writer and novelist Georgina Hammick, the critic and biographer Claire Harman, and myself as chair. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Colin Spencer in particular, because this is his last year as a judge. He's now decided to retire after 38 years. Not only has he been a judge for every one of those years, but the prize wouldn't in fact exist without him. It was he who persuaded Ackerley's sister, Nancy West, that she should endow a literary prize in his memory. And so, on behalf of all PEN Ackerley judges, past and present, I'd like to thank Colin for his long service and for being such a good colleague over the years, and we wish him well in his retirement. The three books shortlisted for this year's prize are, in alphabetical order by author, A Radical Romance by Alison Light, Ghostland by Edward Parnell, and The Photographer at 16 by George SZIRTES. In normal circumstances, there would be an event hosted by English PEN at which I would chair a discussion with the three shortlisted authors. For obvious reasons, we can't do that this year. So instead, we've asked the three shortlisted authors to make their own videos in which they talk about the books or read extracts from them.
Radical Romance is a love story. It's about my marriage to the historian Raphael Samuel, who was 20 years older than me. He was from a communist Jewish internationalist family, very different to my own English background. So it's about the attraction of opposites and how we're drawn to foreignness, the romance of the foreign. It's also about his death, his early death, and my mourning and my coming back to life. So I wanted it to be a meditation on the power of mourning and the place of the dead in our lives. I hope too that it's a human comedy, as marriages so often are, and that it's a celebration in the end of how we do manage to change each other and go on changing ourselves through love. How to summarise a marriage. The human body apparently renews itself every 7 years, sloughing off cells like a snakeskin. Married life perhaps must renew itself too, take on another life every 7 years or so. A marriage is many marriages, made and remade serially, if we're lucky, and able to evolve, after that first itch to be rid of the old skin. Change will come, whether we want it or not. Children are born or not born, they come and go. We grow older, our parents die, these are the most obvious prompts. But a married life has its internal logic too. The fascinating, desirable strangeness, desirable because strange, of the other person becomes familiar and annoying. What then? The Laurentian passion subsides. What then? I think it must be the hardest thing on earth to live with another human being, to share a life, and to bear in mind, really bear in mind, that this person is different. It's not you. And as the years go on, how easily that is forgotten. Raphael and I never had those years.
Ghostland's a book that mixes travel and nature writing and cultural criticism, but at its heart it's about the places around the British Isles that had an influence on various writers, artists and filmmakers whose work in some way intersects with the weird and eerie. I'm talking about people like M.R. James, Walter de la Mare, Alan Garner, W.G. Sebald, Paul Nash, Derek Jarman. As well as exploring the lives of these somewhat haunted figures, Ghostland is primarily a memoir. And tied in with all those old fictional ghost stories and strange children's television series I explore, I also revisit my own half-remembered past in an attempt to lay the ghosts of my own now-vanished family. The sea sizzles, its brown waves churning and depositing fine shingle in an endless spin cycle. I'm crunching along the strand line set down by the last tide. My steps take me into a mild, though breezy southerly that's whipping up the restless surface. A desiccated plant fragment blows beyond the reach of the breakers, like tumbleweed in a western. I walk up the beach, out of the sun and into shadow, a drifting mist of spray in close pursuit. In places, the cliffs have subsided beneath gullies of cascading sand. Layers of yellow-brown strata are exposed to the elements, where brambles and grasses have been unable to get a grip. A raft of sea cabbage at my feet is trying to gain a foothold between the larger pebbles, and a sycamore sapling has sprouted to almost my height. It will not attain maturity before the waves once more overwhelm this meeting point of water and land. A sign warns cliff falls are frequent and deadly. In the distance, I see a group of 3 figures. Through my binoculars, I make out a middle-aged couple and their son, a rangy teenager, heading towards me. The woman is to the seaward side of the man and holding him by the hand, skipping aside when a surge overshoots her expectations. The lad's further back, striding alone, his hands in his pockets. We too walked this same stretch of beach all that time ago, though then the crumbling cliffs would have extended metres beyond where now they collapse in on themselves. Do you remember? I stare into the haze. How did we miss its approach? A figure formed of sea spray that might have hung there unseen for a moment, a play of the light above the shingle, before it dissolved to nothing, the ephemeral Pied Piper who whistled you away.
The Photographer at 16 is the story of my mother, who was born in 1924 in the city of Cluj, Kolozsvár, as Hungarians know it, in Transylvania. She went to Budapest in 1940 at the age of 16 to be apprenticed to a photographer. In 1944, she was taken away to 2 concentration camps, which she survived, and she returned to Budapest, where she married my father and had me. And then in 1956, at the end of the Hungarian uprising, we finished up as refugees in England. The book is told in 3 parts. In the first part, my mother is referred to simply as my mother and my father as my father. That takes me back to 1948 when I'm born, which is where part 2 begins. And here she is no longer my mother, she is Magda, a woman in her own right, making her own life. The third part is in Cluj, in her childhood, of which the chief evidence is a group of studio photographs, which I try to read, which I try to furnish, which I try to make into a narrative. In some ways, the book is a kind of meditation upon the act of doing such a thing, of actually inventing aspects of history, or joining up those parts of history of which one can be relatively certain. I'm very aware of that invention, and what I've tried to do is to make those inventions as true as they can possibly be, so that invention might be an act of love and an act of truth.
Often when we're judging the PEN Ackerley Prize, we wish we could be like Alice in Alice in Wonderland and the caucus race. Everyone shall have prizes. But of course, there has to be only one prize winner. And the winner of this year's PEN Ackerley Prize is Alison Light for A Radical Romance, published by Fig Tree.
Well, despite the weirdness of my husband videoing me, I would like to say how incredibly pleased I am and delighted, of course, to have won this prize. It's great. Thank you very much indeed. I feel that I'm in very good company, not least my fellow nominees with their own superb books, but also because the prize is a prize from writers, the judges are writers, and English PEN, like PEN International, there's a group of writers and campaigners whom I respect enormously. So thank you. The book, I suppose, was a kind of experiment, and the great thing about getting any sort of prize is that it's a boost. It's an encouragement, whatever age you are. I did take some risks in the book. Memoir's a lovely form for that, for moving around between the history out there and the history inside oneself. It's a lovely, flexible, fertile form. So now I'm going to take even more risks with the next book and feel inspired to do so. I thanked a lot of people in the book. I would like to thank again my editor, Julia Annan at Fig Tree Penguin, and my agent, David Godwin. They've been wonderful allies, great supporters of my writing. And I'd like to thank my husband, John O'Halloran, who lived with Raphael's ghost for nearly 20 years now, with his customary good humour and grace. So thank you, PEN, thank you, Peter, and the judges. I'm really thrilled and I feel very honoured.